All right, so it's a few minutes after 1. I'm going to go ahead and get started. And this meeting is recorded, or this webinar is being recorded. So we will share the recording after we're all done and once it's available. So welcome to TCI 101 for administrators. So here we're going to walk you through some of the primary features that admins will use at the beginning of the school year and throughout the year in TCI. So we're going to take a look at a few different tech integrations as well. All right, so I just want to introduce myself real quick. My name is Amanda Crook. I've been with TCI for almost 4 years now. I'm a former social studies and French teacher. And I have done a lot of tech support with TCI, so you may exchange emails with me or have a phone call with me as you're working as an admin in your district's TCI account. And just some housekeeping things. So we're going to try to use the Q&A. If you have a specific question you want addressed in the webinar, we can use the chat to share various things, but make sure you use that Q&A button. We'll answer questions throughout the webinar, and we'll have some time at the end. So our agenda today is we're going to first look at rostering in TCI. So that's setting up your teachers and students with accounts. And then we'll take a look at our single sign-in options, our LMS integrations, and then finally some common issues and questions we get, especially during back to school. Okay, so first, let's take a look at rostering in TCI. So first, we want to point out our auto roster integrations. This is definitely the best solution for most schools and districts. So the two main auto roster options we have are Clever and One Roster API. With One Roster, most districts use ClassLink, but you can also use it with Infinite Campus and Aries, and I think maybe PowerSchool. So there are a few different apps you can use with One Roster. So I'm going to take you into my TCI admin account and show you where you would go and how to set up that auto roster integration. So when I signed in, I'm here on the admin dashboard, and I'm going to use the sidebar to navigate. So for any integrations like rostering, single sign-on, you're going to want to come here to manage integrations. And I already have a roster integration with Clever set up. So this is what the final product looks like. When you're just starting, you're going to see a card that kind of looks like this, but it says rostering. So you would just click on the purple button to get started. But here I can actually click edit and walk you through the same setup wizard that you would see when you first start. So first you'll select your roster method. So I have Clever here, there's One Roster, and then we do have automated CSV uploads to an SFTP. That is another option. So I've got Clever, I'm gonna click next. And if you're doing Clever or One Roster, you're gonna need to enter some credentials from the roster app. So you would get that from your own, instance of that app. So I have my district's Clever ID here. And then you have the staff username and student username source. So these are optional. And these are fields directly from the roster app. So it's going to look a little different if you're using One Roster. And if you don't select anything, staff username would be blank because we pull their email in anyways. And then student username would default to the first one on this list. So we usually recommend email for student username, especially if you're going to set up some kind of single sign-on from like your LMS. Okay. So I'm going to leave it like this. Test my connection. It's a success. And then I click next. So here you want to enter the contact information of the person who would handle rostering issues. So it's probably you as the admin, but you might want to do a generic email as well. All right. So now I've set up the roster integration, And I already have program assignment checked off here because I've already started that. But this is the final step in setting up your roster integration. So you want to make sure you go to program assignments. And then here is where you'll need to make some decisions based on your roster data and your district needs. So the way I have it set up here, this setting, manage teacher program access at the admin level, that is turned on by default. And so that means that I, as the admin, am the one who's saying, creating rules to designate which classes get which program. All right. So in this example, any class in my roster data with this course code test would get this program. All right. So this method of assigning programs, so having the admin do it, is definitely preferable if you have nice straightforward data. So you could easily do it by course code or by grade level or subject. I would recommend doing that. So you would add rules on this page, so I could say, for example, that I'm going to assign the fourth grade program to every class with grade 4. And because I've already started rostering with Clever, I can see my data show up here live. So I get a preview of which classes fall under this criteria. So if I save that, now all of my 4th grade classes coming in from my Clever side will get this program. And so each day when the roster sync runs, the program assignment sync will follow all of these rules. All right, so this is the way to do it if you're just managing it at the admin level. If you want to turn this setting off, you can still add your rules. So I could keep these here, but let's say I have a lot of combo classes, or I just don't know which programs my teachers need access to because I work in the tech department. I don't know curriculum. So you can leave this off, and that will allow teachers to self-assign programs. So when they sign into TCI, they're going to pick which programs their classes need. So they will do all that work, and they will actually create rules that you would see here as well. So that's one thing you want to consider when you're setting up the auto roster integration. Do you prefer to manage it all yourself, or let teachers pick their programs? And again, you can reach out to us if you have any questions about this. But I'm going to leave that back on. Now, if auto rostering is not in the cards for you this year, and you're going to manually manage your account, I'm going to just show you real quick where you can do that. So the nice thing about having a TCI admin account is we give you all the tools to manage your account completely. So if I need to add a staff member, I would come here to staff, and then I've got this add staff button, and it's the same for students as well. So I can add a staff member individually, send them an email, or give them a link to sign up, or I can upload a CSV file, one at a time. So you have some options here to manually manage the account. I would only recommend that if you have a small number of users, or if your district, isn't using TCI across an entire grade level, if it's kind of patch meal or piecework. So, anyways, here, if I go to students, I can do the same thing. All right, and then we'll take a look a little bit more at managing users later in the webinar. All right, so that is rostering in TCI. Do we have any questions that came up in chat or Q&A?
No, not right now.
Okay, thank you. That's Morris and Ellen are here with me just to help out with chat and questions. Okay, so now let's take a look at our single sign-in options. So you've got rostering done, and now you need to consider how are teachers and students going to sign into TCI. So we have a few different options. If you roster with Clever, there's no additional admin setup required. The single sign-on is automatic. So there's nothing to worry about with that. If you want to use Google Single Sign-In, which is our sign in with Google button on our sign-in page, there's no admin setup required. And actually, if you roster students with their email address as their username, and it's the same as their Google email, this is automatic, and they can just use that. So that is a nice feature to have. And then we have LTI and SAML SSO options, which do require admin setup. So the most common LTI apps we see are ClassLink, Canvas, and Schoology. And then for SAML, we mainly see people using Google or Azure. And I'm just going to show you in my TCI account, if I wanted to set up the single sign-on, I would come back to Manage Integrations and use this setup wizard here, add single sign-on, and select my method. If you select Clever, that's basically just you're telling us that you're using Clever to sign in. So it's just kind of a nice to have, but not necessary. SAML, you'll need to have some information ready for us. And then LTI, what you're basically doing in here is generating the LTI credentials to add in your LTI app. And we have great help articles on all of this setup as well, which I'll highlight later. All right, any questions on single sign-on?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. All right, let's take a look at our LMS integration. So first we have Google Classroom. So this integration actually is all done in teachers' accounts. So if your district uses this, teachers would do all of the setup themselves in their own TCI account. Our Canvas and Schoology integrations do require some admin setup. So let's take a look at that in my admin account. So the first thing you'll want to do for both Canvas and Schoology is set up the LTI integration. And this is all in our Help Center articles as well. So you'll set up the LTI so you start it in TCI, and then you'll also complete the setup in your Schoology or Canvas account. So the LTI alone will allow teachers and students to sign in to TCI from Canvas or Schoology. For Schoology, that's all you need to do is just set up the LTI. For Canvas, however, to enable the assignment and grade syncing, you will need to do this setup here in your TCI account. And I can actually show you, so there is some setup that you'll need to do in Canvas to generate some credentials. And our Help Center article here walks you through all of that. So I would highly recommend, if you're going to do this integration, come here first, and it'll just take you step by step through everything. All right, so I think, did anything come up on the LMS integrations?
There's one that came in related to single sign-on.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
How would you set up the Google single sign-on since it wasn't on the pop-up on the Manage Integrations page?
Oh, so is that the sign in with Google, you think?
I mean, you could cover both, or
Yeah.
SAML or that one. Oh,
Okay.
she said yes.
Okay, so yeah, the sign in with Google is automatic. So, or I guess it's done by user. So the teacher on our sign in page would the sign in with Google, and they would click it and link their TCI account to their Google account. And then for students, they can click it, and as long as their TCI username is the same as their Google username or email, it would be automatic, correct, Morris?
Yes.
Okay. And otherwise there's some steps to link to their Google account. But yeah, there are, we have this here as a single sign-in option, but it's not on this pick list because there's no admin setup required. Does that answer your question?
I think it does so far.
Okay.
Can you roster with Clever and use single sign-on?
With Clever? Yes.
Can you roster with Clever and use Google single sign-on?
Oh, sorry, I missed
Oh,
the
sorry.
Google. Yes, you can. So again, I would recommend, if you're going to do that, is select email as a student username source, and so that there's no additional like linking to a Google account on the student side, that they'll click sign in with Google and they should get into TCI.
And that is new for this year for any returning folks. If you're wondering why you couldn't do this last year, you couldn't. So this is new for this year.
Brand new.
About it, yeah.
I just learned about it today, so thank you, Morris, and the software team. All right, and while we're here, actually, I do want to highlight a few features on our rostering page because you may not have access to these features in other apps you might work with. So one thing you have here is running your roster sync. So let's say a new student was added to a class and you're waiting for them to be updated in the SIS, and then it needs to sync to Clever, and then it needs to sync with TCI. But the daily sync isn't running for hours. You can come in here and run it yourself. And as long as that student is in your roster data, they will be updated in TCI. So you don't have to wait for the daily sync. So that's a really nice tip for all of you if you are auto rostering, because I can't tell you how many times I get a call or an email saying the student's not in the class, and all it takes is running the sync. So that's a good troubleshooting tip too, as we're in back to school and people's schedules are changing all the time. Let's see, did any other questions come up?
There's one that I was going to answer in chat, but you can answer live.
Okay.
For SSO is the process as it has been previously. I believe the answer is yes for all of them. So nothing's really changed.
Oh yeah. The whole setup is the same. Yeah. Is that what they were asking?
I think so. But
okay.
Another question could come in. Yep, it seems good.
Okay. All right. All right, so I just want to highlight again our help center and our how-to articles. So we have a nice handy URL, help.teachtci.com. And some of the things I showed you today can all be found, particularly in these categories. So our LMS articles can be found here with all of our setup instructions for teachers and admins. Just managing user accounts, just kind of basic how-to articles can be found here under tools for tech admins. And then our auto rostering and single sign-on how-to articles can be found down here. So I highly recommend coming here first because a lot of the basic how-tos we've covered in here in our help center. So I'm going to now address some common issues and questions we get during back to school, but also throughout the school year. So especially if you're auto rostering, you may have staff that are outside of your roster data who need access to TCI content. So it could be administrators or support staff. So we get a lot of questions about how do I handle that? So the best thing to do would be to manually create their account in TCI, exclude them from auto rostering. So that will prevent their programs from being removed each day with the roster sync, and then manually assigning programs. So we're going to take a look in my admin account on how to do that. So I'm going to start on the staff page. So I'm going to add a staff member. I'm just going to do a single staff member. and enter their information. Give them a password. The minimum characters is 6. So just let them know what you set their password to. The UID field is actually populated with auto roster integration, so you don't need to worry about this when you're manually creating. And then I'm going to want to check this box down here to exclude from auto rostering. All right, so now I've created Jane's account. So this red line here tells me that it's excluded from rostering. So anyone showing that is not included in the roster sync. And because I'm going to jump over to my settings real quick, oops, this one, admin dashboard. Because I have this setting enabled, that means I am the admin, I'm controlling teacher program access. Then I need to assign a program to Jane. If I have this setting off, Jane's excluded from rostering. She can sign in and add her own program. But again, that means any teacher could, add their own program. So I'm managing my teachers' programs for them. So I'm going to go to staff and find Jane here. Or I can also use the filters. This is really handy if you have a lot of teachers or students. You can just start typing it in and it'll filter. And you can easily find the person you need. So I'm going to click Actions and Manage Programs. And now these are all the available programs in my account. So I'm going to add the one that Jane needs access to. And then I'm going to share her login information with her so she can sign in manually and access that content. All right, so that is how to manage staff outside your roster data. Our next question we get a lot is CoTeacher Access. So if you are auto rostering, you're going to want to make sure that any co-teacher on a class is assigned in your SIS or your roster app. Like I know Clever can do custom sections if for whatever reason you can't do it in your SIS. So they can be auto rostered, and our site supports up to 10 co-teachers on a class. So that is by far the best way to get them access through auto rostering. If you are manually rostering, then you can actually add a co-teacher to a class in your account. So we'll take a look at that real quick. So if I go to classes, I can click Actions and Manage Teachers. And I would actually just, type in the person's name, find them from here and then submit. And now there's a co-teacher on Jane's class. So it's really as easy as that. And I can just go back here and, remove teachers. I can add students this way. So these are, nice features to have if you are manually managing your TCI account. All right, another thing that comes up a lot is substitute teacher access. So these are kind of our recommendations. It's not what you have to do. But we do get a lot of districts requesting, or asking, how do I allow short-term subs to get in? So we would recommend creating a generic account, just like I showed you earlier when I made Jane Doe's account. And then if you assign a program, it is going to use a teacher license. So that's something to keep in mind. And then long-term subs, there's a few options. It kind of depends on what's going to work for your district, rostering and your SIS and everything. So option 1 is ideal situation and the preferred option. And that would be to include them as a co-teacher in your SIS or roster app. So that way, everything stays as is, they're rostered automatically, and they can access the students and see grades and everything like that. If that's not going to work, then option 2 would be to manually create their account, exclude them from auto rostering, and treat them like a staff member outside of your roster data. And finally, if anything comes up like major data changes, let's say staff email domain is changing, or you're going to change your roster app. For the most part, a lot of that can be managed in your TCI account. But if you have any questions, you can always contact us at info@teachtci.com. We always find nuances or, one-off situations that come up, and we will work with you to come up with the best solution. All right, so now we have some time for Q&A. Are there any questions, Morris?
Yeah, I saved a couple that I think are common questions. One is, do co-teachers use a teacher license?
Yes. So every co-teacher on a class uses up one license for that grade band and subject.
Yeah, and if they already had the program, it would just reuse that same license, right?
Right, because like if I am using up a K-5 teacher license, so like I have 2 here, I could be a teacher accessing all K-5 programs, but I'm only using the one license. So it'd be the same in a co-teaching situation, or like a combo class situation. If I have the 4th and 5th grade program, I'm only using the one license.
The other question is there a limit on the number of teachers that you can add? And I think this is in context of co-teaching.
Okay, yeah, so we support 10 co-teachers on a class. So that would be the limit, but the general amount of teachers in your account, there's no limit that I know of. We've reached it anywhere.
Yeah, and I think the only thing I want to extend on that is the when we say 10 co-teachers, that includes the primary teacher.
Oh,
So
yeah.
just generally 10 on a class.
Yeah.
I think you might get to this later, but accessing the recording, just a reminder, you'll get a recording after.
Yes.
Yeah.
We'll send an email out maybe by the end of this week, but definitely by next week. Like our virtual summit was last Wednesday and Thursday, and we got the recording yesterday. So we have a pretty fast turnaround, and it'll also be posted on our YouTube channel.
Another question about licenses. Can you show how to review licenses?
Yeah. Like this page, do you think? Is that what they're?
Yeah, I think that's probably the best page.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like just how to get there or
how to read it. Yeah. So a few more features here in your sidebar. You've got your licenses and program access. So these two are related. Okay. So licenses shows you the type of license you have, so that's the grade band and the subject. So you have elementary, middle school, high school, and then social studies or science. So in this account, we just have K-5 or elementary social studies. So to read this, I have 10 total teacher licenses and 100 student licenses. I'm seeing 2 teachers are using a license. So that means I have 8 available. 0 students are using a student license. So I still have 100. If you're auto rostering, you'll see the number of users coming in from Clever. And this is based on your rules. All right. So like, I added that rule earlier for 4th grade. So that added 10 teachers to, who would be using a K-5 social studies license. I haven't run a sync yet, so that's why these numbers aren't matching. And then if I ran a sync, I would have 31 students using a license. And then I have information here on how many licenses are expiring this coming year. So that's like the end of the school year is when our licenses expire. And then I have number of programs here as well. You can disregard temp access. That's just related to this particular account. But so this is just my licenses. So now if I want to see what the titles of programs are in my account, I would come to program access. So these are the particular like textbooks or programs that we have access to. And so some information you'll want to be aware of here is you've got the title. The code here is mainly necessary if you're using any CSV uploads. It'll ask you for your program code. So that's where you'll find it here. Grade level can be set by you. So it's not automatic because, you know, states have different standards. So, but you can actually just come in and set the grade level for your classes or your programs if you would like. And then the license type that applies to that program, and then the number of teachers and students who are accessing that particular program. A few other good features here under actions. I can change the program sync settings. So this means this program is included in the roster sync. I could remove all students. So let's say I only have teachers using kindergarten. You know, I don't have student license for kindergarten. So I can just remove the students and only teachers are rostered to that particular program. Or I can exclude an entire program from auto rostering. So let's say, you know, you're a district adopted TCI in middle school, but not elementary, but a few schools bought elementary licenses. You can exclude the elementary programs from rostering. So some good things, you know, not used by everybody, but good to know that they're there because they do come up on occasion. All right, any other questions?
There is one about so it's a specific situation, so I'll explain it and then you can take it or I could take it. But
okay.
Basically the data that Karen uses in Clever, so Karen's connected with us through Clever.
Yeah.
But the data that gets into Clever is being uploaded through CSVs by Karen. And so the question is about whether having an end date for a student or a class would be reflected in TCI. So therefore, like, you know, let's say you have a class section that's for a single quarter and that quarter ends, how do you make sure that student and those classes are no longer in TCI after the quarter ends?
Yeah. So we do have a setting here on program assignment rules. This one right here, which I think might help this situation. However, so basically you're including only the active academic terms in the program assignment. So that means if your roster data has end dates, like this is a semester 1 class, or this is the first quarter class, you can turn this on. And so you can have rules for, you know, the entire school year, but our site will know, okay, we are only assigning first semester classes right now to this program. I will say it only works effectively if you know that your roster data has clear terms. We've definitely run into issues where classes aren't being rostered because the setting was on, because you know, the roster data just didn't have like clean term data on each section. So again, for Karen, since you're manually uploading your classes, you know, to Clever, I don't know if there's CSV includes like term data, then you can set it there. And if you know that that's correct, then you can turn this setting on. All right, are there any other questions coming up? Check in the chat.
Nothing as of yet since the last one.
Okay. All right. All right, and then just a friendly reminder that we are here for you as we wrap up today. So you can always visit our help center at help.teachtci.com. This is a great place to come for basic questions. If you're running into issues and need help troubleshooting, you can contact us at info@teachtci.com. And we have our Back to School with TCI landing page. And so you can find a lot of admin planning resources here and information on integrating with your LMS. And then I do want to highlight our Help Center homepage as well. All right, so if you come here, you can search here, but also we have great how-to articles, like if you want to start with rostering, everything is right here. So highly recommend checking that out. And then let's see. Morris, would you be able to put that in the chat, the back to school with TCI or Ellen?
Yeah. See who gets there first.
Okay. Well, if you need me to, I can.
No, let's go ahead. I think Ellen's got it.
Okay. Thank you. Just got the Zoom bar on my way. Thank you, Ellen. All right. So I'll give a moment for any final questions, but I want to thank everyone for attending. And again, this is recorded. We will share the recordings by email once they're available, and it will also be uploaded to our YouTube channel. And again, don't hesitate to reach out if you run into any issues using your account, but we have worked really hard to give you all the tools you need to run your account completely by yourself. So we hope that makes life a little bit easier for you.